Charlie Kirk was born on October 14, 1993, in Arlington Heights, Illinois, into a middle-class family. His father, Robert, was an architect, and his mother, Barbara, worked hard to raise him with strong Christian values. Life in the Kirk household wasn't luxurious, but it was warm with faith, family dinners, and the constant reminder that God had a plan for every life. As a boy, Charlie loved America. While some kids dreamed of superheroes, Charlie dreamed of freedom, of the American flag waving high, of a country where people could work hard and rise above their circumstances. But behind that dream was a shy, restless boy who often struggled in school. He once admitted, "I was not a great student in high school. I really struggled with math. I had challenges that made me feel like maybe I wasn't smart enough." Those struggles cut deep. While classmates seemed to grasp things quickly, Charlie often felt left behind. Sometimes he sat in the back of class, staring at the clock, wondering if he would ever measure up. Teachers told him to try harder, but deep inside, Charlie wondered if maybe he wasn't built for success. Yet, even in those hard moments, a fire burned quietly. He spent afternoons listening to talk radio, fascinated by voices that spoke boldly about America, freedom, and values that mattered. His friends didn't understand why a teenager would be so interested in politics instead of parties. But Charlie felt something different stirring inside. He once said, "From a young age, I loved listening to people who were willing to say the truth, even if it was unpopular. That spoke to me." Still, it wasn't easy. In middle school, Charlie often felt like the odd one out. While others laughed and blended in, Charlie sometimes walked alone with his thoughts. Kids teased him for being awkward, for raising his hand too much, or for talking about things no one else cared about. Those lonely days shaped him. One memory stood out. During a history lesson, Charlie raised his hand and challenged the teacher's explanation of the Constitution. The class laughed, but Charlie didn't back down. He said quietly, "I think the founding fathers wanted us to be free, not just follow rules blindly." The room went silent for a moment. That was one of the first sparks of his voice, shaky but real. At home, he found strength in faith. His mother often reminded him of Jeremiah 29 verse 11. "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future." Charlie held onto those words when school felt like a battlefield. Still, discouragement was near. When he applied to West Point, his dream school, he was rejected. That letter crushed him. He had imagined serving his country as a soldier, but the door closed. Later, he would recall, "I thought my life was over when West Point rejected me. I had no idea God was redirecting me." In that moment of heartbreak, something new was born. The rejection left him empty, but it also gave him clarity. If he couldn't serve with a gun, maybe he could serve with his voice. His senior year of high school was different. He started writing essays, small pieces where he poured out his thoughts on America, freedom, and faith. He didn't know if anyone cared, but writing made him feel alive. Soon, those words began to open doors he never imagined. Looking back years later, he told students, "You don't have to be the smartest in the room. You don't have to come from wealth or privilege. You just need courage and faith. That's what I had, and that's what God used." That courage, tested through rejection, loneliness, and doubt, was only the beginning of a bigger journey. Charlie didn't know it yet, but the little boy who once struggled in the back of the classroom was being prepared to speak to millions. The rejection from West Point left Charlie with heavy questions about his future. But life has a way of turning pain into purpose. He carried that rejection letter with him almost like a scar, not to remind him of failure, but of where God was redirecting him. During his senior year of high school, Charlie found a new stage, his local community. His writing had caught the attention of a few mentors, and one day, he was invited to speak at Youth Government Day in Chicago. Nervous but determined, Charlie stood before a room filled with polished young leaders, many from wealthy families, and he spoke from his heart about the greatness of America. He later recalled, "I didn't have the best grades. I wasn't going to the best college. But I had something I knew mattered more. I had conviction, and I wasn't afraid to speak it." His words struck a chord. After the event, an older man named Bill Montgomery approached him. Bill, a veteran and businessman, saw something rare in Charlie, a spark of courage. He told him, "Charlie, you remind me of the early days of this country. You have a gift, and you need to use it." That meeting would change everything. Bill became a mentor, encourager, and eventually co-founder in what would become one of the most influential student movements in America. But before all of that, there was loneliness. Charlie was just 18 years old, fresh out of high school, and while his peers packed their bags for college dorms, Charlie stayed home. He didn't fit in with the crowd. His nights were often long, filled with doubts about whether he was wasting his life. In those quiet moments, he would pray, "God, if this is really what you want for me, I'll do it. But I feel alone. I don't know if I can handle this." It wasn't easy. His friends didn't understand why he wasn't going to college. Some even mocked him for throwing away his future. Charlie later shared, "I had people laugh at me, say I was wasting my time, that I would never amount to anything. But if you know the truth, you don't back down just because it's hard." Slowly, small doors began to open. He started speaking at schools, youth gatherings, and even small political events. Often, there were only 10 or 20 people in the room, but Charlie gave it his all as if he were speaking to thousands. He believed every voice mattered. At one event, he shared a line that would later echo across America. "The American dream is not dead. It's alive for anyone willing to fight for it." Bill Montgomery walked with him through these early struggles. Together, they dreamed about something bigger, a movement that would empower young people to love America, value freedom, and reject the lies of culture that said faith and patriotism were outdated. The dream was bold, but it came with sacrifice. Charlie sold old belongings to afford gas money to travel to events. He slept in cheap motels, ate fast food on the road, and often spoke without pay. There were moments when his body was exhausted, but his spirit burned with purpose. He later confessed, "I didn't know how it would all work out, but I knew this: God doesn't call the qualified, He qualifies the called." And I felt called. One night, after a long trip, Charlie sat in his car outside a small event where barely 15 people had shown up. He leaned on the steering wheel and cried, not tears of defeat, but tears of surrender. He whispered, "Lord, if you want me to stop, I'll stop. But if this is the road you want me to walk, then I'll give everything I have." That prayer marked a turning point. From that night, Charlie carried himself differently. His speeches carried not just words, but fire. His courage was no longer rooted in himself. It was rooted in God's plan. The boy who once struggled in school was now standing boldly, declaring, "Courage is more important than acceptance. Truth is more important than popularity. And faith is more important than fear." The turning point wasn't just in his career, it was in his soul. He knew his life was no longer about proving himself to classmates, teachers, or critics. It was about serving a cause greater than himself. And that cause was just beginning. Charlie's decision to keep going, even when the road was lonely and hard, was the seed that would grow into a national movement. That seed was Turning Point USA. Started small. In 2012, Charlie was only 18 years old, fresh out of high school, without a college degree, without wealth, without a powerful family name. All he had was his conviction, his mentor Bill Montgomery, and his faith that God had placed something in his heart too big to ignore. The vision was simple, but bold. Reach America's young people with the truth about freedom, faith, and responsibility. Charlie later said, "I recognized that there was an ideological imbalance on a lot of these college campuses, and we wanted to provide a counterpoint rooted in conservative, pro-freedom, pro-liberty, America first ideas." At first, nobody took him seriously. He would walk onto college campuses with a few pamphlets, a folding table, and nothing else. Students would laugh, professors would shake their heads, and sometimes administrators told him to leave. But Charlie refused to give up. He would look at those empty sign-up sheets and say quietly to himself, "Even if just one person listens, it's worth it." There were long days when he and Bill would drive from city to city, living on gas station snacks, stretching every dollar. Some donors gave small checks, $25 here, $50 there, and Charlie treated each gift like treasure. At night, in cheap motels, he would write down ideas, plan speeches, and pray for God to multiply what little they had. He later shared, "I didn't start Turning Point USA with millions of dollars or hundreds of people. I started it with a dream, a mentor, and the courage to keep showing up. The cost was high. He missed out on what most people his age were doing: parties, college life, vacations. Instead, he faced rejection, criticism, and even threats. His inbox filled with harsh words from people who wanted him to quit. But instead of breaking him, it pushed him deeper into faith. One night, after a campus event where only a handful of students showed up, Charlie sat in his car, exhausted. He closed his eyes and whispered, 'God, you didn't bring me this far to leave me. I trust you.' That prayer became his anchor. And then, slowly, the tide began to turn. One by one, students started listening. One by one, campus chapters started forming. One by one, young people began to say, 'I thought I was alone, but now I see I'm not.' It wasn't just about politics. It was about giving students hope. It was about telling them they had purpose, that they weren't victims, that their lives mattered. Charlie often challenged them with these words, 'We have to tell our babies to stop crying.' He wasn't mocking them. He was calling them higher, telling them to rise above victimhood and live with courage. By 2015, TPUSA had spread across dozens of campuses. By 2019, it was on over 1,000 campuses nationwide. What started with one young man's heartbreak and conviction had become a wildfire of faith, courage, and freedom. But Charlie never forgot the cost. In one interview, he admitted, "It's hard, it's tiring. You miss birthdays, you miss family moments. You carry the weight of critics who want you to fail. But when you know your mission, you keep going." His faith gave him strength. Many nights, before big events, Charlie would pray Psalm 27. "The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear?" That scripture became his shield. There were also moments of beauty, thousands of students standing together, chanting for freedom, raising their hands in unity, parents writing letters, thanking him because their children had found direction, young people telling him, with tears in their eyes, "Because of TPUSA, I found my voice. I believe in myself now." Charlie often told them, "Courage is contagious. When one person stands, others will follow." And indeed, they did. From the boy who once sat quietly in class, afraid to raise his hand, to the leader of a movement touching every corner of America, Charlie's story is a testimony of what happens when you don't give up. It was never about being the smartest, the richest, or the most powerful. It was about faith, about conviction, about refusing to let rejection write the end of your story. And so, when Charlie looks back today, he doesn't just see the tears, the long nights, or the criticism. He sees what God did with a spark that was never meant to go out. His life reminds us all, even if you feel small, you can change lives. Even if people laugh at you, you can keep going. Even if the world says no, God's purpose says yes. Charlie Kirk's story isn't just about politics. It's about the power of faith, courage, and perseverance. It's about what can happen when one person decides to stand for truth, no matter the cost. And for the young people listening, his story leaves this challenge. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Don't wait until you feel ready. Start now. Speak now. Act now. Courage is more important than comfort. And the world is waiting for your voice.